Welcome, everyone, to the Arabian Traveler Poetry. I'm your host, Mohammed Bader, aka the Arabian Traveler. On this show, we explore journeys, not just across geographic borders, but the internal journeys of the human heart, spirit, and creative expression. Today, we are diving deep into a topic that touches every single one of us: how we build bridges in a world that feels increasingly divided, isolated, and fractured. We often ask ourselves, how do we move past labels of race, religion, or identity to find real, lasting, positive relationships? Our guide for today's journey is an incredible author. I know him personally, worked with him a lot. He's a storyteller, singer, songwriter, and belonging strategist, Parfait Bassalé. He's the author of the revolutionary book, The Way of Befriending: Transforming Relationships and Organizations for Belonging. Parfait weaves together personal narratives, practical toolkits, and beautiful original music to show us the ultimate antidote to isolation in the countercultural act of friendship. Parfait, welcome to the Arabian Traveler Poetry. It is an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Mohammed, for having me. What a joy.
Great. So, Parfait, your book begins by addressing a very painful reality in modern society: the concept of othering. You describe how easily we isolate people who don't fit into our immediate circles. So, my question for you, number one, in the opening of your book, you talk about the man standing at the door. Can you share that story with our listeners and explain what othering does to our collective human spirit? And also, you can throw a little bit about you, just in case if some of our listeners don't know who you are, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe that might be helpful.
Yes, happy to. For the sake of your listeners and our listeners here, a little bit about myself to help situate that story that I unpack at large in the book is that I am an immigrant born in Benin Republic, um, which is a small country in West Africa, and very early on as a kid, because my dad used to work for an overseas company, we traveled quite a bit. And so there
Yes.
was a lot of displacement and movement in my storyline. And so what that did for me was really create an ache and a longing for a place I will call home. Right? Everywhere
Yes.
I would go, I was often reminded, whether intentionally or unintentionally, that I was the outsider. Right?
Yes.
And so that storyline was just there all throughout, and left what I call a belonging wound that was just there.
Hmm.
And so fast forward um, 30 plus years, I am at a conference, and it's a pretty packed conference, and I am pretty zealous that day. I'm gonna charge in and attend
Uh-huh.
every single element of the conference, keynotes and breakouts. So I show up to the first session of the first day. Well, actually, let me backtrack here a little
Okay.
bit. So the first day, I'm totally on every single thing. So by the end of the day, I'm super tired. I'm exhausted
Yes.
because physically tired, but also the topic of that conference, it was a national conference on race and ethnicity. And the content and the data and the statistics about how we were failing various communities wore on me. So by the
Yes.
end of the day, I was just really depleted. So the next day, I'm less enthusiastic to hit the conference floor. So I'm dragging my feet, get to the my first breakout of the day a little bit late, about 5 minutes or so. And then when I get there, I notice a huge line at the door. And unbeknownst to me, this is a very charismatic speaker who was in high demand. But I get there and I'm looking at the room. I see a full engagement, full excitement in that room, which I liken to the place of belonging, the place to be. People were having a blast, people were having fun, and they were learning. And there were a
Yes.
bunch of people who were on the outside, um, And then out of nowhere, two people come from the left field. They cut through the line and they get inside the room. They ignore people at the door, but they just figure out a way in, and they're sitting by the presenter, projector, and they're enjoying the party. And the rest of us who are on the outside, we look at each other. We're like, "You got to be kidding me! Did
Yes.
this just happen?" Right? And then fast forward, long story short, at the scene of that, I decide I was about to leave the scene when the presenter waves at me and invites me in. I go in, I attend the training, very powerful training, and at the end, I'm engaging with this presenter to try to unpack what happened. So I thank him, um, and I ask him, I thank him for making room for me in the room. And he asked me what I do. I tell him I'm a presenter and an administrator. He gives me his business card and tells me, okay, all you got to do when you reach out to me is to say you were the man standing at the door. Um,
Oh, I see.
and and that hits me
Beautiful. Yeah.
deep. That hits
Uh-huh.
me deep. And then I ask him, well, I will do so, but tell me, how in the world did you notice I was at the door? Because you were busy doing an amazing job. And he said, well, because I used to be the man standing at the door. Um,
Oh.
and then from there, I
Uh-huh.
go and unpack what the research tells us about belonging. And so that I tell this story at large in the book to illustrate the fact that othering can happen in many ways, sometimes because of our own stories of having been on the outside and we are perpetuating some patterns, right? In my case, I just came and stopped at the door. Other times, othering happens, from not being aware of those who might be on the outside, like those two people who cut the line, and they were just focused on what worked for them and their comfort, and missing an opportunity to extend
Yep.
an inviting hand to someone who was on the outside. But then, really, the invitation to be like that presenter who I call the friend,
Yes.
who notices those on the outside and is intentional about it. Because when we don't befriend through our actions, through our words, through our policies, through our practices, we are unintentionally othering others. And really, what it does is it strips others of the sense of they belong, that they matter.
Yes.
And in so doing, we grow more numb as well over time, and we lose part of our humanity when we miss those opportunities to befriend.
And I forget, I know you sent me like a couple songs. I'm not sure whether you made a song about that or not, the standing at the door or uh
No, not
not
specifically, not
specifically. Okay.
specifically, but I did write a song called Safe House
Mm-hmm.
that explores some of these ideas of, there's this line in the song that says, where do wounded birds go to, when they're trying to
Mm-hmm.
heal, right?
Yes.
And it's this idea of can I be a safe house? Can you and I be a safe house
Yes.
to folks we come into contact with who most likely have hidden wounds or
Awesome.
invisible wounds?
Yeah. Well, we both, I mean, we've talked historically and we worked together.
Mhm.
Appreciated your lovely work when I had you come and work with some of my teams, kind of repairing some of those wounds. Uh, again, as a traveler myself, we kind of relate. I see how culture can either unite us or build walls. Why do you think human beings are so quick to build walls around their tribal identities? And why is it standard people pleasing not enough to fix it?
Yeah, yeah. It really is a pattern that is as old as when humans started gathering in tribes,
Hmm.
right? And I think there was a utilitarian function to it
Hmm.
back then, where we needed to know who was in for
Hmm.
survival purposes and who was out. And I fear that it's not as helpful in the modern context. And that's one of the arguments that I make in the book, that we have to figure out a way to transcend
Hmm.
that tendency. Why we do that? There's a lot of
Hmm.
theories that try to explain it. Right? There's three of them that I tend to default to often.
Yeah.
The first one is this, evolutionary theory that essentially, speaks to the notion that we It's just this innate sense of needing to find out who's us and who's them, who's safe and who
Yep.
isn't, right? And we operate out of that. There's also social identity theory, which stipulates that we just because we want to feel good about ourselves, right? And we are prone to attribute good traits and positive traits and features and moral character to those who are part of our tribes. And in
Yep.
order to validate that sense of I'm part of the good people because I want to feel good about myself, then the others who are different, they must be less than in order to validate that social identity. And then the one that I also kind of think about often is realistic conflict theory, which essentially stipulates that in the presence of scarce resource, when there's scarce resource, in
Mm-hmm.
order to justify our claim on that scarcity, we will other those on the outside in
Mm-hmm.
order to justify our claim that I should have it, right?
Yep. Yep.
So there's
Mm-hmm.
not enough jobs, so there must be these
Yes.
people, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And
Yep.
so there's obviously complexity around these things. Now,
Yeah.
how do we mitigate these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said in your question, just trying to be nice and people pleasing and tolerating, um, while on the surface may look like it's making a dent, it really isn't because it's not transformational. It doesn't transform, right? It's
Yes.
just
Yes.
placating some sort of a band-aid on a deeper issue. In order to find a meaningful mitigation strategy, I would argue that we need to go back to neuroscience, which tells us neurons that fire together wire together,
Yeah.
right? It's through mutuality, it's through proximity that we rewire our brains, that we
Mm-hmm.
transform and we change. And so I like to say that the other disappears in proximity, right? The closer we
Mm.
get as we build relationships, we get to know people, then there's
Yes.
transformation and change that happens. We start seeing them differently.
Yeah. That's great. And so I know you're an immigrant, I'm an immigrant, and so that is, there was a time when we felt, or at least for me, I felt like you really had to be nice and put that face. And you're right, like there are a lot of concessions that go with that. And so I like your approach of challenging that and just kind of moving out of that comfort zone of just wanting to please. Um, and so I want to move to another aspect of, I mean, the othering, this is just one big framework that I've seen you discuss. And
Hmm.
then the next uh, framework that I see in your book, it just, you've argued beautifully that road to finding own belonging is actually through the active practice of befriending others. And you just had mentioned that to us. So I noticed in that book you give us three core pillars to make this happen: courage, curiosity, and compassion. And I wanted to break down into the following questions.
Hmm.
So if we start with courage, you say befriending requires the courage to confront internal and external biases. What does it look like to bring courage into a broken relationship or a divided workplace?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think first recognizing that there's a broken relationship, right? I think it's a first start. There's
Mhm.
a story that I tell in the book where, as an immigrant, I was unintentionally socialized to to see the African American community in a certain way that I didn't realize, right? I'm black, grew up in Africa, consumed a lot of media like hip hop music and
Yes.
and news and so forth. And at the same time, I was just admiring the African American community. I didn't realize there were some subliminal messages around that community at that time around them being violent or dangerous, right? There was some of those insidious messages that were part of the narrative that I didn't realize were being shared. So when I came to the United States, I remember going to try to get my first haircut. Right, I lived in Portland at that time. I was primarily in downtown Portland, which is primarily white collar demographics. So I'm going into I'm told that to get a haircut from the African American community, I need to go to Northeast North Portland, and so I take the bus. I'm going to that side of town. The demographics start changing, right? And initially, in my being is just excitement. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is where the African American community is, right? So
Yeah.
there was just admiration, right? I'm seeing these
Mhm.
things that brought memories, and then I eventually get off the bus and I get, on Martin Luther King Boulevard, and I'm at the door then of the barber shop, and for the first time in my experience as an immigrant, I am surrounded by the African American community, full blown. And then
Mhm.
there's a different emotional response that comes in that moment, which was fear, right?
Mhm.
And at that moment, I had a choice, right? I had a choice to recognize that, whoa, there's something that came out of me that I didn't see coming that
Mhm.
was there,
Yes.
and unpack
Yes.
it. I needed the
Yep.
courage to
Yep.
hold a mirror, and that's what I call honesty as a mirror, right? To hold a mirror and say, what have I come to believe? What narratives have I come to believe
Mhm.
about a community? And I could have easily rationalized it, downplay it, and be like, well, new environment, I'm not familiar, right? Explain it away. But no, I had to really look at it and realize, you know what? At the same time, I was consuming media that was, elevating a community for their charisma and their creativity. At the same time, I was digesting messages about them being dangerous, and
Yep.
it impacted my subconscious. And so that's part of the courage that I talk about in the book. We need to hold a mirror around the storylines that we've come to believe about the other tribes.
Yeah.
And sometimes it may come from traumatic experiences that we've heard or we've experienced, but really holding that pause and realizing that each story is very unique, and we don't want to shut the door to an opportunity for transformation and change and healing by just having that anchor bias or looking for confirmation bias. So that's
Yeah.
that's that's part of the courage piece that I unpack in the book.
Yeah. Thanks. And you talk about curiosity, and I love how you tie back to the original Latin roots, meaning careful
Mhm.
or diligence. How can we use genuine curiosity to realize that the other is just another us with a different story?
I love that line. It's one of my favorite go-to line, The other is just another us with a different story. Yeah, I just think curiosity is such a powerful tool, right? One, it's one that I look at it as almost a grounding strategy too. When I find out something about someone, or there's an emotional response to something that I've witnessed because of a storyline that I've been socialized to believe, right? By asking questions, it gives me a buffer, right? A
Yeah.
buffer so that I'm not reactive to the neural pathways, right? So I by asking a question, then there's a buffer, number one, and then number two, there's an opportunity to add
Hmm.
some data points, right? New data. Help me understand. I'm curious about.
Yes.
Um, and as we are really lean into those questions with genuine curiosity, we really want to understand. I think it unveils so much that we
Yes.
we didn't have, right? I stumbled upon a consultant, a few months ago, who, as part of their practice, they say that every time they have an interpretation of a set of events. So, for example, someone doesn't respond to their emails, or someone didn't return a phone call, the brain automatically tells a storyline. you know, well, they must be maybe upset at me, or they must, you fill in the blank. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
now they tell themselves, okay, what information will
Yes.
I need in order to prove my interpretation as false?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that leads them into that place of curiosity. How can I ask a question to understand the context that may maybe shed light on that initial interpretative lens that I've
Yep.
used? And so,
Yep.
so curiosity just allows that new data point. And maybe the last point I will say about curiosity is
Yeah.
also helps de-escalate situations, right? When
Hmm.
we are all elevated emotionally in a
Yes.
place of conflict, by asking a question, it really communicates to the other that you care to know, you care to understand them.
Yep.
And that creates a kind of a de-escalating psychological impact on the other. So it's a very powerful tool that we don't give enough credit to, and we don't spend enough time cultivating our questions and the art of questioning.
Thank you. That's a really good thing to pause on too. And then the final pillar, I was calling those the three C's too there with you, the compassion, uh, which I'm learning from you that it really means to suffer with.
Hmm.
Why must compassion move beyond a simple feeling and turn into an active step of walking alongside someone? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
what's
No, going back to the song that I mentioned earlier, which is available on my Spotify. It's called Safe House,
hmm
for listeners who are curious about it. But it's this idea of a wounded bird, right, who is looking for a place of rest. And in the song, there are three verses. The first one say, "I see you." It starts with "I
yes,
see you," and the second verse say, "I hear you." Um, and the third verse starts with "I am with you." And
yes,
then this the intentionality in the song and the progression of those verses that starts with noticing, right?
yeah,
And then being curious about, leading with curiosity to find out the context, the story, and then
yes,
in light of that, then being with,
yes,
presence, companionship.
yeah,
Um, and the reason why compassion is so important in my framework of the three C's, courage, curiosity, and compassion, is that compassion, in some ways, is an outcome of the first two C's, right? When I lean into the courage to find out,
hmm
to understand that other who's so different and so
hmm
weird, I'm putting it in quotes,
yeah, yeah,
and then I use curiosity to really unpack that thing that I initially didn't understand or that I feared.
hmm
Um, the stories usually bring about a level of complexity or
yep,
brokenness or what have you that emotes us, right? That
yep,
that causes us to, that awakens our shared human sensibilities that we all have. And then from there, the idea is not to solve problems for people, because some problems don't require solving. Some
yep,
stories just needs to be sat with and acknowledged as a reality. Wow, that's what you lived, and that's why you see the world this way. I understand. I
hmm
don't necessarily excuse it, but I understand, and that understanding and that compassion
yes,
can allow us to engage differently and hopefully lead us to even a better collaborative solution, right?
yep,
But oftentimes, what I'd like to tell folks is, if you find yourself saying, "I just don't understand how, I just don't understand
hmm
why,"
yeah, yeah,
again, I've said those things and I say them at
yep,
times, but those should be trigger words for us to realize, okay, there's maybe more curiosity that needs to happen
yep,
so that I
yep,
can get to a place of compassion and understanding of what stories have
yep.
shaped that.
Yeah, and this reminds me because I do couples therapy and marriage
Hmm.
therapy, and it reminds me a little of a bit of a theory called internal family systems, and in that
Hmm.
they actually use eight C's. And
Hmm.
if you master those eight C's, including compassion and connectedness and all those C's, then you become your higher self. And a
Hmm.
lot of internal family system, very often people exile. There's a part of themselves that they exile, they shove down in the
Hmm.
bottom. And the way to heal is to befriend those exiles. And so
Hmm.
you've got like a very beautiful book. And I think it's, if you look at research, it would be really very grounded. You can um, look at that internal family systems, and it does
Hmm.
really support that in terms of becoming at peace with oneself.
Hmm. Love that. Thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna take a little bit of pause here. I know you sent me a couple songs that I'm going to play because I know, like, try to record a song. I know you have a beautiful voice and beautiful music, but I found out it's hard to play that over Zoom. It does not come out very good. So, so of the two songs you sent me, which one would you like? Like, we take a break to play that song. I'll play it to the audience, but maybe you can tell me a little bit about that song and
Yeah.
the meaning of it and what's the context
Yes.
behind it.
Yes. And so, the song is "You Won't Let Go." I think
Hmm.
would be a good one to add there. And the way I wrote the song "You Won't Let Go" was as I was reflecting on this whole idea of befriending, which requires, you know, again, we talked about the three C's, but at the core of the song, I'm really highlighting this relentless commitment to stay in,
Hmm.
to be faithful to the relationship as best as we can, um, and what can happen as a result of that. So I'm painting the picture of what a friend does. A friend doesn't let go. A friend shows up. A friend notices. A friend inquires. A friend stays, right? And so the song is just a nod, if you will, and an
Hmm.
invitation to this ideal of friendship. Um, and so yeah, you won't let go when I'm drowning
Great.
in my sorrow. You won't let go when it seems there is no hope. You won't let go when the clock says time's up. You won't let go, right? It's this idea that I'm going nowhere. I care about you. You know, I know things may be rough right now. I know we may not be seeing eye to eye here, but I ain't
Mhm.
going nowhere. You still have inherent value, and we'll figure this out. We'll
Yeah.
figure this out.
Yeah, we seek permanence. I mean, permanence is a an important human compassion. Just being, I've worked with a therapist in the past who try to focus so much in healing and saying we're there because this in a world full of abandonment and people leaving and
Hmm.
recreating, it's important to have that permanency.
You call my name each time I lose my mind all alone with no aim. You hold my hands, pull me from the ground and help me find a stand. As I lay me down in your arms, I'm safe and sound, although disarmed. My head you crown with hope I bound. You never let me go, you won't let go. Life's losses and gains, although they rock my world, I know your love remains. As I wake up each morning to face my fears and foes, I know how the story ends. As I lay me down in your arms, I'm safe and sound, although disarmed. My head you crown with hope I rebound. As I lay me down in your arms, I'm safe and sound, although disarmed. My head you crown with hope I rebound. You never let me go, you won't let go. You never let me go, you won't let go. No, you won't let go. When I'm drowning in my sorrow, you won't let go. When it seems there is no hope, you won't let go. When the clock says time's up, you won't let go. No, one more time, you won't let go. When I'm drowning in my sorrow, you won't let go. When it seems there is no hope, you won't let go. When the clock says time's up, you won't let go. No. As I lay me down in your arms, I'm safe and sound, although disarmed. My head you crown with hope I rebound. As I lay me down in your arms, I'm safe and sound, although disarmed.
I like to move to poetry here. You know,
Hmm.
just this show is deeply rooted in poetry and arts, and your book is incredibly unique because it's a multimedia experience. You include your own original music and lyrics to help hearts process these heavy truths. So, the question I have for you is how does art, music, and poetry bypass our logical defense to help us heal relationships? Is there a specific lyric or song from the book that speaks directly to creating positive community bonds?
Yeah. Well, Mohammed, I'm taken back to how we met in the first place, and me getting to hear, snippets of your art from your book, um, and you hearing me sing a song. I remember it was a song called "Home," which I think you may want to share with
Yeah.
your audience as
Mhm.
well, and how we then approach each other. We're like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah, we have similar,
right?
you know.
Your art and my art." As we heard each other's art, we were like, "Holy cow!
Yep.
There's parallels, there's connection, there's a shared experience."
Yeah.
That alone, just for your
Yeah.
listeners' sake, speaks to the
Absolutely. Yeah.
point here, right? Art is an extension of ourselves.
Hmm.
And, I was fascinated when I learned about the research about when music is actually playing. And so they had these electrodes and they were tracking the region of the brain that was being stimulated as people would listen to music or listen to songs. It's actually
Yeah.
its own area that is different from the language center, right? When
Yes.
when music is playing. And so what that tells us is it's kind of its own language. It's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
its own thing that is stimulating the brain. And so for me, that's very powerful that when we play music or we use the arts, we are just speaking to a different dimension of our beings. And I think it's a shared one that we all have,
Yes.
and so when I utilize music, I'm just trying to amplify the depth, the complexity of this concept that I'm talking about, and to evoke our emotions as well in ways that words
Hmm.
alone cannot, right? There's things that art brings out that words alone, a PowerPoint, a
Hmm.
presentation, words on the page will not, right? And
Yes.
and and I think, there's many stories of people hearing a song that just takes them back to a story and experience that they have, and they start crying, right? They start relating, right? And so that's the hope that I was trying to do, embed in this book is a holistic experience, because this invitation is not an
Yes.
easy one. It's
Yes.
it's it's not a just piece of information. Go and try to befriend others. It's I call it sacred work. I use that term a lot in the book. It really is a sacred
Hmm.
practice, and so I wanted to add as many dimensions of our
Hmm.
complex human experience as part of the reader's experience.
That's, fantastic. Wow, a lot of, there's a lot to learn, a lot to learn. And again, I too really appreciate our connection. It felt like we, even though, here is somebody from totally different country and I'm from a different country, like very opposing, and we come into the US and we have these shared experiences. There's always that uh feeling
Yeah,
different, being, missing home, really missing home.
yeah,
That's the
yeah,
that's the biggest one, that aching that immigrants feel for home, despite of
yeah.
all the success you have here, and you still ache for home.
Yeah, and if I may, Mohammed, just to
Yeah.
add to this point that you just shared, and something that I found in my own research and work, is that aching, that longing
Hmm.
for a place people will call home, a place where they feel seen, cared for, valued. Believe it or not, right? Immigrants experience it. Many communities experience it as well, and that's the
Yeah.
piece that is fascinating. Like this experience of being the outsider is just the basis upon which people feel like they're an outsider, that changes based on what your life experience is.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the book is arguing is that why not tap into that shared experience of what it feels to be on the outside? We all
Yeah,
know it sucks.
that's right. Yeah,
Right. We
yeah, and
all know it sucks, right? And use that as a springboard
yeah,
to lean into courage and curiosity in order to bridge our divides.
yeah. And human beings feel safe with something that look like them. I don't know if you've experienced this when when I'm among other Middle Eastern people, or even I went to Greece and the Greeks thought I was Greek, and all of a sudden I was in. I was safe. I was just it was just no problem. I went to Morocco, Jordan, even parts of Spain where the looks people kind of seem to judge by the look, like based
Yeah,
on the look.
yeah,
And unfortunately, in the in the US, or mostly white dominant culture, like the dark brown look, black, it just synonymous with maybe not safe, or like you have to work a little bit harder to kind of prove that I'm safe or I'm worthy.
yeah,
And
yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and that's one of the narratives or even myth that I'm pushing against in the
mhm,
book, right? This idea that just because you look like me or I look like you doesn't mean that this is a
mhm,
safe harbor.
mhm,
We like to think so, and in many instances it might play out that way. But I tell the stories of some of my most excruciating
mhm,
experiences of ethnocentrism and even racism were experienced by people who kind of looked like me because I was a foreigner, right? Um, and so really the invitation here is how can we begin to look at those external
mhm.
things as, yeah, it's good to have, it may provide a touch point of commonality, but at the core people's stories are so unique and complex that we just need to move towards them as individuals, right? As much as we can.
Yeah.
Um, because that's really where then there's opportunity and we're putting then less burden on them to having to prove I'm okay, I'm fine. You can you can trust me. Because after time you take people who seemingly are from the same country or same
Mhm.
whatever, they spend time long enough together, you're gonna find enough point of divergences between them as well,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So for the person listening right now who feels isolated, or who notices an outsider in their community, workplace, or family, what are the immediate actionable steps from your 5 steps of befriending that they can implement today?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I'm gonna approach my response in two ways. One, in a kind of broad sense, and one of the things that I like to say is to think of the next immediate action step as kind
Hmm.
of a guiding principle, and asking yourself, how can I be the unexpected friend here?
Yeah.
And the key word here is unexpected, because in the book I unpack this notion that unexpected movement towards others in ways that can reveal shared connection or express a level of support and care or provide a sense of agency.
Yes.
Those unexpected acts impact individuals psychologically in a way that makes them feel valued and seen. And wow, I fit here. Oh, I'm seen, right? And so the big umbrella is how can you be the unexpected friend who shows up, right? Um,
Yes.
Now, to be more granular, obviously in the book I unpack this further and I offer, a 5 piece framework that I call friend, which the first one is, face yourself. It's really this idea of introspection. I notice someone out there, let me make sure that, especially if I'm feeling any inhibition or fears that I don't want to move towards them, just do the inventory. Um, and then decide to lean into courage for step number two, which is the R, which is reaching out and reciprocating. We don't do very well, especially in Western society, with hosting and hospitality,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's really hurting our society. So how can you move towards someone, invite them over, invite them for coffee, make that first action, and with the rise of technology, we find ourselves um,
Yes.
at a store, we pick up our phone, and because we don't want to have the conversation. What about, a clever question like, hey, what's the best part of your day so far? you know
Yeah.
there's this movement towards the other, and then the
Yeah.
I is for inquiry, leading with questions. The E is for extending grace,
Yes.
right? Because sometimes the barrier is just maybe a past action, someone made a mistake, and then we box them into a category that they cannot escape. So really extending grace the same way we would want grace extended to us. And then the N is normalizing difference. And it's just this idea that as much as we unconsciously
Hmm.
act in a way that wants to hold us as the gold standard
Yes.
of human behavior and what have you, it's
Hmm.
just not realistic, and it just
Yes.
does not reflect the complexity and diversity of the world. And so really normalizing that there's different ways of showing up, different ways of living, different ways of being. And then the D is for doing it again and again and again and again, because repetition makes
It's,
things a little more easy in the
it's
future.
like a quality improvement. Yeah. It's a, it's like we are a process improvement. You gotta try
Yeah,
it, plan, do, study, act, and do that over again, see how it
yeah,
works.
yeah.
Uh, so the framework, your framework doesn't just apply to individuals, which is really
Hmm.
amazing. You talk about systemic befriending with larger organizations and faith communities. So when institutions and communities actively practice the way of befriending, what kind of positive cultural ripple effect have you witnessed?
Yeah. Well, let me answer the question and then provide some of the ingredients that people can get more details on in the
Hmm.
book. So
Yeah.
the practical outcomes that I've seen that were very, touching were organizations that have really taken this to heart. I've seen them reimagine how they do onboarding.
Yeah.
Organizations and that have taken this to heart, I've also seen them reimagine how they do team meetings,
Yes.
right? All the way to service delivery, even products and services that they offer. Um,
Yep.
and the core foundation upon which they were able to bring about these changes were what I call the um, ingredients of belonging, which
Yeah.
are what research tells us about what brings about an outcome of belonging. And those are connection, the extent to which people feel that they're connected
Yes.
in that space, to that organization, or to its people, or to its leadership. Number two is support and care, the extent to which people feel, again, supported and cared for through packages, through policies, through interactions, and you name it. And then the next one is agency, the extent to which people feel like they have a voice in
Hmm.
shaping policies or decisions that impact them. And then lastly, psychological safety. So when organizations, and I've seen this, organizations have taken those four ingredients to heart and seriously, they started thinking about, hey, when we hire someone for the first time, how do we do connection well from the get-go? How do we get them connected to people in our organization so
Hmm.
that they're not alone? How do we create, interdepartmental connection points so that the divisions and the departments are not siloed, which puts us at risk of
Hmm.
us versus them. We've all experienced this in organizations where we point the finger, oh, those IT folks, or those HR folks. But by being intentional about creating connection points between those departments, you can kind of mitigate for those things. So I've seen it
Hmm.
being implemented and some great outcomes. And so yeah, connection, support and care, agency, and psychological safety are the key ingredients that leaders can build programs, systems around to do systemic befriending well.
Awesome. Well, I have one last question, and then after that, we I want to talk about end the show with one of your second songs. Uh, but if there's one core message or a modern parable from your book that you want the audience of travelers and dreamers to carry with them forever, what would it be?
It would be the story of Stacy in the book. And the story Stacy, I'll give a high level
Mm-hmm.
description of the story. Stacy is actually a real person, but I've given her a fictional name in the book for
Uh-huh.
anonymity's sake. The story of Stacy takes place maybe a few years ago, where I'm headed back to Portland, Oregon for a surprise retirement party for Stacy.
Mm.
And as I arrived to the location, there are already about 70 plus people there. All were international students I went to college with over the course of 6 7 years, each coming at different times, but they were all
Yep.
international students. And we start catching up. Some of us, have gray hair now. Some of us have lost hair. So, some of us are parents, and
Mm-hmm.
life has happened. It's been decades in the making, and we
Yep.
start to reminisce the years, the struggles on campus of figuring out then life in the American context.
Uh-huh.
And then on Zoom, there was another station of people who zoomed in remotely from countries around the world. Nearly 100 people
Wow.
remotely did not want to miss this retirement party. And as conversations are happening, Mohammed, here's this consistent consistent sentence that you keep hearing over and over and over again. I would not be here if it wasn't for Stacy. I
Mm.
would not be here if it wasn't for Stacy.
Wow.
And you figured in that room there were law enforcement folks, there were community organizers, there were architects, project managers,
Yep.
engineers, medical and mental health providers, and the list went on and on and on and on. Stacy showed up
Mm-hmm.
time and time again, providing opportunities for connection, going the extra mile for someone, making that extra phone call, right? Befriending strangers, seeing in them more than just the label or the accent or the nationality, but
Mm-hmm.
seeing a person with potential, with a story.
Yes.
And in the book, I call her the miracle worker
Mm.
who made
Lovely. Yeah.
miracles possible
Mm-hmm.
for hundreds of people across faith traditions whose parents were praying miles
Yes.
and miles away for protection over their children. The
Yep.
miracle worker who made all those prayers come true was Stacy because she chose to
Amazing.
befriend unexpectedly. So be that Stacy. That's
That
the
is.
invitation in the book.
That is really wonderful, and I can attest to that. The the two people who helped me for 30 years, I made it as an executive leader in government, and there was one of them was like Stacy, who gave me the first job as a supervisor and had to believe in me and look
Mm-hmm.
beyond the accent, the
Mm-hmm.
and she always would say she was tough, but she always found a compliment for me. She did not give me
Mm.
anything easy, but it was always having my back and
Yep.
and it just it you need that launch. You need that
Yep.
one
Yep.
person that believes in you. And then yeah, so befriending is a wonderful thing. That you want to tell me a little bit about the second song, and
Mm-hmm.
we'll probably end with
Weave it
that
in.
song. Um, and
Yeah.
yeah, and I can't remember the name of it. I
Yeah. It's home. It's home that I
it's
sent
home.
to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome.
And just like we've explored throughout this great conversation, this idea of home, where is home? I came to write the song Home when I started to realize that home was more than just geography, right? Because as an immigrant for a long time, for almost 10 years, I kept thinking, that home was what I left behind. And I couldn't wait to go home. I couldn't wait to go home. And which there's elements of truth in that. But the longer I stayed in the United States and I started experiencing unexpected friendships from people, different race, different backgrounds, they just took interest in me. I started experiencing home within those friendships. And that's what this song is about. Just like, the Stacys who made this place become like home for countless of people. And so that's what this song is about. It's about home. Where's home? It's about the people. It's about unexpected friends.
Yeah, yeah. Whoa, yeah, yeah. Whoa. Where is home? I wanna know. Will I return? Would it be like years ago? Where is home? I wanna know. Will I return? Would it be like years ago? 'Cause sometimes I feel so confused, but what I'm truly missing is the love. Sometimes I feel so confused, but what I'm truly missing is the love. I call it my home, no matter what you say. I'm packing my suitcase now. I will go, no matter where God takes me. Yes, I know now, I know, it is the people who make it feel like home. Yes, I know now, I know, there is more than one place that I will call home. Making my home, 'cause I won't live in the past anymore. I'm gonna have new dreams, new hopes, 'cause I'm alive and grateful to the Lord. Yes, I know now, I know, it is the
Your words and your work are a powerful reminder that systems change when hearts change. And hearts change when we dare to be a true friend. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your heart with us on the Arabian Traveler Poetry.
Thank you so much for having me,
You're
Mohammed.
welcome. You're welcome. To our listeners, the book is The Way of Befriending Transforming Relationships and Organizations for Belonging by Parfait Bassalé. It is an immersive, beautiful read full of music, stories, and deep wisdom. Pick up your copy, dive into the music, and take that bold step to build a bridge this week. Keep traveling, keep writing, and keep connecting. Until next time, I'm Mohammed Bader. Safe travels.